Gunna shocked the world when he got out. You need to act your age and not your girl's age. It just made Tyga look kind of crazy. So even though it was an uphill battle overcoming the snitching fiasco, but he was also not in his peak as far as music. It also took Tyga a couple of years to. So Gunna's latest album, One of One, has been out for a couple months, and even though it's kind of flown under the radar, it's done really well and it's been well received by a lot of fans. It's even catching steam on platforms like TikTok when people are posting clips of the song "Today I Did Good" or "One of One" and stuff like that. And the fact that many platforms aren't talking about him as much, I guess now because they're seeing the snitch narrative isn't sticking anymore. I think this signifies that Gunna, over the past year and a half, has low-key overcame the whole snitch narrative, which is fascinating to see low-key. And this comeback Gunna has executed, it's got me thinking, like, what's the most impressive comeback in hip-hop history? And the two names that come to mind are Gunna and Tyga. And I want to figure out who has the more impressive comeback between the two. But before I get into that, make sure you guys like and subscribe. My name is Mfasis. I do this podcast called the Talking to Myself podcast, where I talk about certain topics related to music and the music industry. First, I want to analyze Gunna's comeback. Now, we all know, for the most part, know Gunna's come-up story, or at least the gist of it. He's a YSL artist, which I'll get back to later, but he was one of the artists who blew up in like the late 2010s. He was an XXL freshman back in 2019, and he was cranking out hits at a high rate, whether it's, songs like Top Off, Drip Too Hard. You could go on and on. Like, he was cranking out hits at an insanely high rate. But Gunna's fall from grace prior to his comeback wasn't even necessarily a music issue. It was really a public image issue, because a couple years ago, Gunna, along with Young Thug and everybody affiliated with YSL, they were arrested and they were being brought up on RICO charges. And Gunna, he was in jail with them for a little bit, but Gunna shocked the world when he got out. Basically, he got out by snitching, or kind of snitching. People have been having a debate essentially ever since on if he snitched or not, and whatever else. Like, mind you, I don't care much about the snitching conversation. I really don't care. I just want to enjoy the music and not really worry about what these people do. But it's still like a big deal within hip hop, and like it's a very polarizing topic. So he already had people making jokes about him because years beforehand he was on Crime Stoppers. But now it's like, oh, he actually got caught up in a very serious situation where it looks unlikely that Young Thug will get out of jail. And now people are looking at him as if he betrayed Thug or whatever. So because of this, his public image has had like a lot of damage done to it. You've seen artists cut ties to him, like Lil Durk and Lil Baby, and a bunch of other people have like publicly said that they no longer rock with Gunna. And with countless artists turning their backs on him, and with even a lot of fans also turning their backs on him, it looked like his career was over, low-key. Before he started this comeback, it looked like his career was over. But then he did something that I thought was really smart, which is he laid low for a couple months, and then he came back with some music. And that's a very big risk, especially in this day and age, because most artists are too scared to go that long, to go MIA for that long, because they're worried about losing people's attention and losing steam when it comes to their music and momentum and stuff like that. Even an artist as big as Drake, right now, with him taking the loss that he took to Kendrick, he should be laying low for like a good 6 to 12 months. But it seems like Drake simply can't help himself but to come back out like pretty much immediately and try to still be seen. But Gunna actually went against the grain in that aspect and decided to lay low for a little bit before he eventually came back out. Then he came back out with his song Bread and Butter, kind of explaining his side of the situation, which people debate on if he's just full of crap or not when it comes to his excuses that he was making in the song or not. But either way, the song "Bread and Butter" was still like a very catchy song. It was like it was a solid song, obviously. So a lot of people liked it. And then on top of that, he followed that up with Back to the Moon, which people liked even more. And then he dropped his album, A Gift and a Curse, which was extremely well received and even had the song Fuck You Mean on it, which is his biggest song off the album. And in my opinion, his best song off the album. So now all of a sudden, Gunna essentially successfully turned the tables, and now he's riding high with a release that had no features but still had a bunch of hits on it, which for somebody in Gunna's lane is hard to do because again, Gunna's not like super lyrical and anything like that. So it's like artists in that lane, they typically rely on a lot of guest features from other artists in that lane, but he showed that he could carry himself on an album, which was very impressive to a lot of people. And then he followed that up by dropping his most recent album, One of One, which has also been received extremely well. It's had standout tracks on it, like the title track "One of One," the song "Today I Did Good," "Proud of Them," like a lot of songs that are being received really well. And it's just interesting to see that with his back against the wall, he put out arguably two of his best bodies of work, and now you have a lot of fans who either are trying to convince themselves that he didn't snitch, or for the more realistic fans, they're just coming to the realization that they don't care if he snitched or not because they just like his music. At this point, it almost seems like nothing can really stop him now. Whether it's Young Thug coming out and kind of implying that he no longer raps with Gunna because he put out that post that says whatever Wham says goes. Wham is referring to Little Baby, and Little Baby cut off Gunna. Or whether it's Young Thug's kids coming out and dissing Gunna, which literally happened like a day or two ago, where his Young Thug's kids, they basically said Gunna will get whacked if he come back to the A, but it doesn't seem like anything's really gonna make Gunna kind of fall at this point. Like he really he really finessed his way into staying relevant. But I want to switch the focus to Tyga's comeback because, see, people have recency bias, so I don't think people understand just how insane Tyga's comeback was. Now, Tyga's from a different generation. He blew up in the late 2000s, and he was signed to Young Money. He signed at the same time that like Drake and Nicki Minaj did. And he had an impressive run of mixtapes and party songs in the early 2010s, like Rack City, and what is the Well Done mixtape series and stuff like that, the Last King album and stuff like that. But around like the mid 2010s, he ran into a series of really unfortunate events. And to this day, I don't know if I've ever seen a rapper take that many L's back to back to back to back in the public eye like that. It was fascinating to watch so many bad things happen. Not saying I'm wishing bad on somebody, but it was just like it seemed like pretty much every week something crazy was happening to him. Like, so to start off, people were looking at him sideways because even though he denied it, he was very clearly dating Kylie Jenner from the time she was like 16 or 17, which is basically grooming. And a lot of people were looking at him funny for that, even though both he and her claimed that they didn't start dating until she was 18. You know what I mean? Like, that's still, the situation still look crazy. Also, because of that, he ended up getting dissed by Drake on If You're Reading This Is Too Late, where Drake said, you need to act your age and not your girl's age. Because also, remember, around this time, Drake and Tyga fell out. And Tyga, he had put out some disses of his own, like Make It Work and stuff like that, the track Make It Work. But Drake's one line on that song, on If You're Reading This Is Too Late, trumped Tyga's diss altogether by him just saying you need to act your age and not your girl's age. Then also Tyga, he foolishly dropped a surprise album, the Gold album, and this is at a time where a bunch of artists, they were doing like surprise drops like Beyonce and Drake, but Tyga had no business doing this, but he did it anyway. He dropped the Gold album, and it only sold 2,000 the first week. And he got a lot of backlash because not only did fans not like the project, but then also it just sold poorly, so it made him look like he was irrelevant. And by this time, he's no longer being paid attention to for the music. He's more so being paid attention to just for his affiliation to the Kardashians. And then also after this, he got accused of messing with somebody who's transgender. And this was happening at a time where people were feeling like he was also dropping like some mid music. So you're talking about just a series of L's taken back to back to back. It was just not, it seemed at the time, it seemed nonstop. So, and his career was on the decline for a few years. Like, he didn't have the same amount of attention. And then a few years later, also, he eventually ended up getting like dumped by Kylie Jenner, and then she like left him for Travis Scott or whatever, and like had a baby with Travis. But either way, Tyga, he took a bunch of L's, and then his career kind of declined for a couple years. But then in 2018, he got popping again with the song Taste featuring Offset, which that's low-key an interesting coincidence that both Tyga and Gunna pulled off these comebacks, and at some point in the midst of them doing their comebacks, they had songs featuring Offset. But anyway, though, like, the song Taste was a mega hit. It was a smash song. It had like billions of streams, and it literally resurrected his career and allowed him to get back into a place where he can go back to being the guy making all the club bangers. And he's kind of just been chilling there ever since, really. Like, he's again, his popularity is still declined a bit, but nonetheless, his career kind of got back on like a better track compared to where it was before he came back with the song. So even though it was an uphill battle overcoming the snitching fiasco, he still was in a better position to pick up where he left off compared to Tyga. Tyga not only took massive blows to his reputation and the public perception of him, but he also was dropping some songs that were considered mid. So he was also, not only was he not in his prime not only was he not at his peak in popularity, but he was also not in his peak as far as music. And he also was not at his best when it comes to public perception. So, and also his career, it also took Tyga a couple of years to make that comeback, which is a lot harder to do because so much time passed and people move on so quickly. So what Tyga did, in my opinion, was more impressive than what Gunna did. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think had the more impressive comeback between Gunna and Tyga?